Let's talk about sugar. Not in a preachy way, not in a you're doing everything wrong way, and definitely not in a stop having fun way. This is about understanding what sugar actually does in your body. Even if you're young, even if you're fit, even if you don't have a single concern about your weight right now. Because a lot of people, young people, think, I'm young, I train, I'm active, I'm fine. And right now, you probably are. But biology doesn't care about confidence. Biology cares about repetition. Sugar isn't evil, but modern sugar use is very different from what the human body evolved to handle. Let's start simple. When you eat sugar, most of what you're eating is sucrose. Sucrose is just two sugars stuck together, glucose and fructose. The moment it hits your gut, it gets split apart. Both of them enter your bloodstream. Glucose causes your blood sugar to rise. Your pancreas releases insulin. Insulin's job is to push that glucose into cells to be used for energy or to be stored for later. Fructose takes a different route, and all of it goes straight to the liver. Your muscles don't really use fructose. Your brain doesn't really use fructose. Your liver has to deal with it. And the liver has only a few options. If you don't need energy, and you probably don't because the glucose is already there, fructose gets converted into fat. The fat doesn't automatically show up in your belly. It often stays inside the liver first. That's where fatty liver disease starts. Now here's the part that most young people don't hear. You do not need to be overweight for this to happen. You do not need to look unhealthy, and you do not need to feel unwell. I see lots of young adults in their early 20s with fatty liver, insulin resistance, high blood pressure, gout, and type 2 diabetes. They don't particularly look unhealthy. They just grew up normalizing sugar. Now let's go back to talking about glucose for a moment. Even if you're lean and active, frequent spikes in blood sugar still matter. Every spike means insulin, and repeated insulin spikes over years slowly make your cells less responsive. That's insulin resistance. Insulin resistance isn't about size, it's about exposure. You can be slim and have poor metabolic health. High glucose levels affect blood vessels. Over time, it leads to subtle endothelial dysfunction. That's a fancy word for lining of the blood vessels being affected. They become less flexible and less responsive. You don't feel this happening, but it's one of the earliest steps towards cardiovascular disease. Now, just take this on board. This isn't about heart attacks at 20. This is about setting the groundwork for problems at 30 and 40. Now, let's switch back to fructose again, because this one really matters. Fructose increases fat production in the liver and also increases uric acid. That's why gout is showing up in young people, not necessarily in old men, young men. Fructose also affects the gut barrier. High intake can increase gut permeability. That's what people call leaky gut. It allows bad inflammatory molecules to pass through easily into your body, increasing low-grade inflammation throughout the body. And you may not necessarily feel this today, but your body remembers patterns. Now, this is the trap. Sugary drinks, juice, soft drinks, energy drinks. And when sugar is in liquid form, it bypasses your normal satiety signal. You don't feel full, you don't slow down, and you don't compensate later. Drinking sugar with meals has become so normal that people don't even think of it as food. You sit down to eat a perfectly fine home-cooked meal and automatically grab a juice or a Coke. That drink alone can double the glucose load of that meal, and you didn't really enjoy it that much. This is one of the biggest habits that you would carry into your adulthood, and eating out just reinforces it. Combo meals, refills, energy drinks to focus, juice marketed as healthy. Now, let's spare a thought for zero sugar and diet drinks. This is where the confusion really sets in. Just because something has no sugar doesn't mean it has no metabolic effect. Sweeteners still activate sweet taste receptors. They still trigger insulin responses in some people. They still condition the brain to expect sweetness. Your body tastes the sweet and prepares for sugar. When sugar doesn't arrive, that mismatch creates confusion in metabolic signaling. Some sweeteners are worse than others. Some have stronger effects on insulin and gut bacteria, and some increase cravings later in the day. And energy drinks, even the sugar-free ones, they combine sweeteners with caffeine in a way that trains your brain to associate stimulation with sweetness. The food industry loves this. They get to say zero sugar while keeping you hooked on sweetness. The problem isn't an occasional diet drink. The problem is daily exposure or regular exposure. Daily sweetness trains your palate. Daily sweetness trains your habits. Now, let me be really clear about something. I'm not telling you to stop having fun. I'm not telling you to never drink anything sweet again. And I'm not telling you to be perfect. I'm saying this: what you do routinely becomes who you are metabolically. I see this all the time in my patients. The habits you build at home matter the most. If you are eating home-cooked food, you do not need a sugary drink with it. Water should be normal, not something you force to drink. Train yourself to eat food without needing the sweetness alongside it. Because once that habit is built, later in life, when stress increases, when sleep worsens, and when work gets busy, those early habits either protect you or they amplify the damage. By the time people are told they have fatty liver or pre-diabetes, the habits are already deeply ingrained. And changing habits at 40 is much harder than adjusting them at 18 or 22. I see young adults every week who genuinely don't understand what processed food is. They think they're eating normally. They're shocked when they're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in their mid-20s. They didn't do anything extreme. They just repeated small choices every day. So here's a simple message. Eat real food most of the time. Drink water with your meals. Be cautious with sugary drinks. Have them if you have to when you socialize. And be skeptical of zero sugar marketing. Understand what sweetness trains your brain, even without calories. You don't need to be scared, you just need to be aware. Your body is incredibly resilient, but it remembers patterns. And the earlier you understand this, the more freedom you actually have in later life. Not less fun, but more control. That's the goal. Thank you for watching this episode of FSD Doctor Talks. Please share and subscribe, and see you in the next episode.